In the world of OASIS, what is the Masterplan? Not the song, but the actual plan the song was written about. Let me read you something from former OASIS drummer Tony McCarroll's book, The Truth. This takes place in Manchester in the early 90s. The Masterplan was first mentioned in Noel's flat. "I have a master plan," began Noel. He then began to explain how we could guarantee certain success for ourselves. "It's the media that sells records," he said, "not the band. It's a simple game. Get with it, boys. If we keep telling everyone we're the best in the world, sooner or later they're going to believe it." I then asked, "What's the rest of the master plan?" Noel went red and shifted on his feet. "It doesn't matter," he muttered. It seemed as if he had suddenly become defensive about what he had told us. If I was ever to refer to the master plan again in the future, "shut the fuck up" would become the standard response from Noel. I guessed we were right in thinking that he had never meant to give so much away. To answer that question, what is the master plan, I'd like to invite you to join me on my first ever feature-length documentary. It will be a much longer journey than usual, but I promise if you stick with it till the end, it will be worth it. And then you can make your own mind up. Is this just some mad conspiracy theory? Or is this the greatest musical masterwork of the entirety of the 20th century? Noel Gallagher famously doesn't tell the truth in interviews and is very, very cagey when it comes to what the lyrics in his songs are actually about. When asked about how he writes songs, Noel Gallagher said this.
I've never understood how people can look at a sheet of words and write a song to fit the words. That's completely and utterly alien to me. I've never attempted it, but it's melody and music first. Words are almost an afterthought.
And yet, in Paolo Hewitt's second book on OASIS, Forever the People, Paolo Hewitt observed this. Noel has a very real need for privacy, for secrecy. In so many of his songs, he tells his subject that he can't commit fully and that they will never see the full man. He would voraciously devour music biographies, but keep his reading habits a secret. Noel was fiercely disciplined about his writing. He fretted big time over his lyrics. On this channel, I've done several deep dives into Noel's lyrics, and they are full of meaning. And reading this in Paolo's book got me wondering why Noel seems to spend so much time trying to distract people from ever discovering the dedicated song craftsman he really is. In a similar vein, the other day I stumbled across this video of Noel on the Definitely Maybe DVD talking about how he doesn't really know anything or care anything about album sequencing, about the order in which songs appear on his albums.
One thing that I said I don't give a shit how it goes as long as Live Forever is the third track. I don't care about anything else as long as that's the third track. Then you get all the scientists on the record company who go, well actually, how you should fucking sequence an album is, you get listening posts at Virgin these days, and they've mathematically worked out that like the kid's attention span is for the first 3 songs. So really the first 3 songs should be really important. And I was like, is that what you do with your time? Well, it's musical theory. Fuck off.
The way he talked there, it kind of stayed with me because it seemed a little bit manufactured, not entirely genuine. And, confirming this, I then remembered scans that I'd seen online from various notepads of his from the 90s that went up on auction, and these showed that, despite what he says here, he was actually fascinated by the idea of album sequencing. All these things started to run together, and I began to wonder, what the hell is he trying to hide? In the Supersonic book, Mark Coyle says this. There's a side to Noel that you don't really see. In all the time I've known him, he He's never shown these things apart from when you stick him behind the glass with a microphone, and then he can let this emotion loose that he's got. The door opens and suddenly you can see Noel. You see something else, almost a little boy, or something very innocent and very pure. The veil is lifted away and you get a better sense of what he's about. They are my favourite moments. It's like a dark room. The door opens and a little bit of light comes in. And then the door's shut again and he's calling you a twat. So it's fair to say, I reckon, the truth about what Noel really thinks is probably found more readily in his lyrics than in interviews. In a recent feature with Radio X, Noel said this.
What is Noel Gallagher's new song about? It's about 4.5 minutes. I don't like talking about what my songs are about. You've got to work that out for yourself.
Okay, Noel. Challenge accepted. Hold my beer. By this point, I was officially becoming curious, so I decided to have a look at the back cover of my favourite Oasis album, What's the Story Morning Glory. I looked through the track listing to see if I could find anything there, any kind of pattern hidden in the track listing. And the first thing I really noticed was that the album was split into 3 parts by the untitled songs that occupy tracks 6 and 11. Almost like a story, with a beginning, an interval, a middle, another interval, and then the ending. I realised that the whole album was set out like a 3-act play or a story. Then it occurred to me that the album is not actually just called Morning Glory. It's named after a song that's just called Morning Glory, but the album title has been extended. It's called What's the Story Morning Glory. I wonder if Noel inserted those first 3 words and put them in brackets just to give us a clue. So the album is set out like a story with a clear beginning, middle and end. It's called What's the Story? Morning Glory. I decided to go for a drive, put the CD on in my car and listen through to see if there was any obvious narrative, any story hidden in the songs. I didn't really have a thread to pull on until the album reached track 4, Don't Look Back in Anger. When that song came on, I thought to myself, well, at least I know the story of this one. I've done a full feature on it on my channel. And it's also featured fleetingly in the Oasis Supersonic documentary. This song is Noel Gallagher's breakup song with a girl he met in San Francisco called Melissa Lim. She basically saved his career and the band. Don't Look Back in Anger was literally named after something she said to him when they finally parted and went their separate ways. As that song came to an end, I realised that not only was Don't Look Back in Anger named after Melissa Lim, the whole album was. Even the very title of the album, What's the Story Morning Glory, was something she would say to him on the phone. It was her pet greeting for Noel. Noel had named the whole album after her. I stopped the CD and scrolled it all the way back to the beginning, and I listened it through with that in mind. As the album progressed, I realised with amazement that Morning Glory really was a story. It's kind of like a film. It's a 3-act play, an autobiographical story that tells the true story of 1 year of Noel Gallagher's life. Noel used a mix of new songs and previously written songs to tell the tale. So, I'm going to talk you through 1 year of Noel Gallagher's life, and I'm going to show you how the lyrics on this album, in order, line up with history. This is my conspiracy theory to answer the question that Noel posed in the title of this album. What's the story?
This is history! This is history! Right here, right now, this is history!
I started off with track 4, Don't Look Back in Anger, which I knew was about Melissa Lim, and from there I worked backwards. Don't Look Back in Anger was track 4, so I looked at tracks 3, 2 and 1 and asked, what were the previous few chapters of that particular story? It all starts in a very well-known place. That story was initiated by Oasis's famously disastrous gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go in LA. Our story begins on the 29th of September 94. Let me set the scene for you. In his excellent book Oasis, The Truth, former drummer Tony McCarroll says that in those early days there was a constant battle on between Noel and the rest of the band. Noel was trying to get them focused on the goal, eyes on the prize, aiming for success. But they kept behaving like football hooligans and throwing it all away, to quote Noel directly. Around 6 months earlier, they had had the opportunity to play their first ever overseas gig in Amsterdam, where record company reps from Japan and America would be in the audience. It was to be their first massive shot at the global big time. The band got on the ferry to Amsterdam. Noel went to bed, being responsible, but the rest of them stole booze from the duty-free, tried to spend forged £50 notes, got into a fight with the ship's police, got arrested, thrown in the brig, and then deported back to England. And it's my belief that Noel wrote the song Sad Song on that weekend, alone in Amsterdam, wondering if the band really had just thrown away their one and only shot at the stars. The chorus of that song repeatedly sings the phrase, "We're throwing it all away." Fast forward a little over 6 months, and this time the band were in America. They were booked to play at the prestigious Whiskey A Go-Go in LA, and according to Oasis biographer Paolo Hewitt in Getting High, everyone from the LA music scene was coming to check them out, including representatives from Epic Records. This gig was the American equivalent of the Amsterdam gig that never happened. They were getting a second chance. And this, in Noel's mind, could have been the gig that launched them into the big time on that side of the world, that enabled them to crack America and carry on what the Beatles had started. Paolo Hewitt says this: on their day off, they arrived in LA, where they discovered crystal meth. Use it and you don't sleep for days. The first mistake some of the band made was to sample the drug and then stay on it all day and all night. The second was to attend a party that Epic Records had thrown on the roof of their hotel on the afternoon of their gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Epic splashed out $50,000 on the bash. Noel was starting to feel the pressure. This was an important show. Of all the band, Noel knew his limits and would never test them when a gig was at stake. He was determined that Oasis would be the first British band in years to crack America. This is confirmed in the Supersonic book, where Mark Coyle says, "I think the perception was that the Whiskey A Go-Go was one of those moments. If you get it right here, it will set you up for the whole tour." And Michael Spencer Jones, the band's photographer, said, "Noel looked really stressed out and under a lot of pressure. You could see that he had the entire world on his shoulders." The gig, however, was a legendary disaster. Most of the band and crew had been awake, strung out on crystal meth, for over 36 hours. The Whiskey A Go-Go was a prestigious show. This gig was Oasis's first chance to prove they were a cut above the rest. And of course, they blew it horribly. Liam came on wired up to the eyes and spoiling for a fight. Behind the amps he had racked out lines of crystal meth, and every now and then he would disappear for a hit. And as it went on, Noel got angrier and angrier. Then Liam turned and hit him with his tambourine. Standing in the audience watching the debacle, Marcus, their manager, flew into a temper. When the gig finished, he marched into the dressing room where Liam and Noel were sitting, locked the door, and went berserk. Noel, equally as angry, then went to hit Liam, and Marcus had to step in between them. The door finally opened after an hour. Noel marched out and found tour manager Maggie. "How much money have you got on you?" he demanded. She handed over around $800, and Noel returned to his hotel. Now, let's look at the lyrics to the first song on What's the Story Morning Glory and see if it corresponds to this event. The first line of the first song is, "I don't feel as if I know you, you take up all my time." And that's true. Tony McCarroll says that Noel was isolated from the rest of the band. There was a distance between them, and they did take up all of his time. In the 90s, Noel never stopped working. He was constantly writing, recording, touring, doing radio interviews and press interviews. So these lines could very easily apply from Noel to the band. "We live in the shadows and we had the chance but threw it away." There again, just like in Sad Song, we see Noel talking about the band. That phrase, "throwing it all away," is a Noel direct quote. Paul Gallagher quotes him saying it in his book, Brothers. And it also occurs later in this same album on track 4, Don't Look Back in Anger, where Noel explicitly ties "throwing it all away" to the band. He sings the line, "Please don't put your life in the hands of a rock and roll band who'll throw it all away." So once again, we see these lines all line up. This opening song, Hello, sounds like Noel is singing it to the band. It's never going to be the same because the years are falling by like the rain. It's never going to be the same till the life I knew comes to my house and says hello. Noel believed Oasis were now done, the years were falling by, time was running out, they'd blown it. He thought he was going to have to go back to his old life in Manchester on the dole. Mark Coyle uses almost those exact words in the Supersonic book to describe what happened that night, saying, "I don't know what happened to the band at that point. Something changed. The band was never the same. In some respects, that was the night it finished. That was it." And Noel says, "I felt we could have smashed it in America. I really felt we could have been bigger than anyone that had gone before us because the timing was right. It was a funny old night, but it kind of set the tone for the rest of the 90s because it made me think, actually, you know what? These lot really don't give a fuck. I remember going back to the hotel and seeing Maggie. I took the float off her and went to San Francisco." 3 nights previously, Oasis had played a gig at a venue called Bottom of the Hill in San Francisco, and after that gig, Noel had got together with a fan called Melissa Lim. But she had apparently been more than a one-night stand to him because they had stayed in touch. And now, having been basically broken mentally by the rest of the band, and Liam in particular, Noel desperately had to get away. So he went back to Melissa without telling anyone else he was leaving or where he was going. At this point, Melissa herself picks up the story in her one and only press interview given to the San Francisco Chronicle. "He was very upset," she says. "I took him in, fed him and tried to calm him down. He wanted to break up the band." San Francisco has a reputation of being a place where bands come to die, like the band and the Sex Pistols. "I wasn't going to let it happen on my watch. I told him, you can't leave the band. You are on the verge of something big." Noel says, "I don't know what the fuck I thought I was doing. I was just going to disappear, fake my own disappearance or something. It was quite a traumatic time. I was hanging out there for a couple of days doing too many drugs, not eating, and being a bit mad. She was saying, 'You're going to leave and that's it? What are you going to do?' And at that point I was thinking, actually that is a good point. What am I going to do?" And now we come on to the second song of the album, Roll With It, which reads perfectly like a conversation between Melissa and Noel at this exact point in the historical story. It seems to start with Melissa talking to Noel, saying pretty much exactly what she claims to have said in her interview. You've got to roll with it, you've got to take your time, you've got to say what you say, and don't let anybody get in your way. She's telling him to roll with the punches, take some time out and recover, and say what he needs to say, get it all off his chest. But Noel can't do it yet. He's still a broken man. He's still in a state of recovery after what the band put him through in LA. The next lines are Noel's response to Melissa's advice and encouragement. He says, "I think I've got a feeling I've lost inside. I think I'm going to take me away and hide. I'm thinking things that I just can't abide." Again, it fits perfectly, doesn't it? That's literally what he did. He took himself away and hid. He can't face going back to the band yet. He's still a mess. But these next few lines are really interesting. I believe this is still Noel talking to Melissa. "I know the roads down which your life will drive. I find the key that lets you slip inside. Kiss the girl, she's not behind the door." I think this is Noel saying to Melissa, I know what your life is going to be like. You're probably going to stay in San Francisco, get a job, raise a family, have a fairly normal life. But then he offers her the key to a locked door. He invites her to come with him out on the road. He says, "I'll go back if you come with me." But Melissa doesn't step through the door. She closes his hand back around the key and kisses him instead. Kiss the girl, she's not behind the door. She doesn't step through it. She says no. "Do you know, I think I recognise your face, but I've never seen you before." Noel is starting to fall for her, quite hard. There's a sense in which they were somehow meant to be together. It's like he's found the yin to his yang. They've never met before, but they're supposed to be together somehow. He's kind of wondering if he's found his missing other half. Paolo Hewitt picks up the story. Liam was going out of his mind. He was sitting and staring at the wall. We were really worried for Noel. We didn't know if he was in Manchester, Ireland, Canada, Colombia. It was horrible. After 2 days of waiting and worrying, someone suggested getting hold of Noel's telephone bill for the room. When they looked at it, the only digits that seemed strange were a San Francisco number. Tim Abbott from Creation Records dialed it. "This girl answered," he says. "I said, 'It's Timmy Abbott, I'm a friend of Noel's. I believe you might know of his whereabouts.' And she said, 'Call me back in a minute.' I called again, she answered and then put me on to Noel." At that precise moment, Noel Gallagher wanted out of Oasis. The next day, Abbott flew to San Francisco. He says, "I was expecting to find this strung out, wasted, dishevelled kid who I hadn't seen in weeks and who had lost it, Brian Wilson style. But there he was in a beautiful ski jumper, and we hugged. We spent 2 days shopping, hanging out, and generally relaxing." And so now we move on to the third song on the album, Wonderwall. For this to fit, it needs to bridge the gap between Roll With It and Don't Look Back in Anger, and the historical story of what happened next. Now, an interesting fact about this song is that it was originally called Wishing Stone. The name was changed to Wonderwall after a George Harrison record at the last minute.
I remember that song, its initial working title was Wishing Stone. And I don't know why, but the kind of the Wonderwall thing, you know, it's a George Harrison album and all that. I mean, history would be very different if it was called fucking Wishing Stone. And that song started off, it was called, a fan one night after a gig gave me, earnestly put this thing into my hand, and she closed it and she said, "That's your wishing stone." And I was like, "Oh right." She said, "You should write a song about that." And I was like, "Okay, can you let go of my hand then?" And I wrote this song, and the title was, Wonderwall for a long time was called Wishing Stone, and I thought, it's a bit fucking, I don't know about that. And then I seen the Wonderwall poster and went, hang on a minute. Hang on, if I did, you're my Wonderwall. And of course, for the next 10 years, I was like, what's a Wonderwall? It's like, no fucking idea.
In future years, Noel would claim that the song was written for his future wife, Meg Matthews. But after they split, he said otherwise. Paolo Hewitt says this: "Noel and Meg were obviously a serious relationship, but initially Meg found Noel hard to get used to. He wasn't a tactile person, nor was he one for sitting around and discussing his feelings. Go deeper, and the barriers snapped up. He never gave anything, never expressed himself. It all went into the songs. Noel played her a tape of the songs, including Wonderwall. Meg suspected it might be about her, but didn't like to ask. She only found out for sure when Noel revealed all in the interviews he undertook to support the album, and that was a good couple of months later. Now let me read to you from an article on Noel from the Daily Mirror. In 2002, Noel did a complete U-turn and insisted Wonderwall actually had nothing to do with his ex and that he'd been forced to fib. The meaning of that song was taken away from me by the media who jumped on it, he said. And how do you tell your missus it's not about her once she's read that it is? It's a song about an imaginary friend who's going to come and save you from yourself, he explained. The first line is, today is going to be the day that they're going to throw it back to you. I believe that the woman who gave Noel the wishing stone was actually Melissa on the first night they met at that gig in San Francisco. And I believe this line in Wonderwall represents the day on which Noel gave it back to her and told her he had to leave. He had to go back with Tim to rejoin the band, as she'd advised him. And that's why it says, today's going to be the day they're going to throw it back to you. You throw stones. This is the day he throws the wishing stone back to Melissa. By now, you should have somehow realised what you've got to do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. This part of the song seems to connect perfectly to the conversation they were having in Roll With It. In fact, the whole song seems to be saying that. Noel is saying, we don't have to choose between staying together and staying in San Francisco, or me pursuing my dreams and us splitting up. We can stay together and I can pursue my dreams. Come with me. He's also definitely falling head over heels in love with her at this point. He says, there's no one else in the world right now who loves you as much as I do. All the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. Here again is more evidence from the lyrics that Noel invited Melissa to come with him. If she came with him, it would be out onto the winding road of touring and into the blinding lights of live concerts and press and paparazzi. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how, because maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. He can't seem to find the words to tell her how much she means to him. But it wasn't meant to be. If my theory is correct and Noel really did invite Melissa to come out on the road with him, to join him, she said no. She remained in San Francisco. But, as we'll see later, she did save him. Noel returned to the band with Tim Abbott, but he was now a changed man in more ways than one. Mark Coyle said, you meet those people in America, they take you under their wing. They're spiritual people. She was one of them. Noel didn't come to us, he went to her, and when he came back, he was different. Noel says, I was angry. We were better than that. You have one shot at it in your fucking life. It seemed to me that everyone else was not taking it seriously. I guess I left a little bit of me on that stage that night, and the relationship between me and everybody else was never the same after that. I think I probably felt after that night it was more me and them as opposed to us. It's a thing many people do. When a previous chapter of life is ending and a new one is beginning, they get a new haircut to symbolise that new start. Noel had his hair cut right down to a skinhead. And that's why his hair is so short in the video for Whatever. That's why his hair is so short in that appearance they made on Jules Holland. Mark Coyle says he just got to the end of the fucking road. That was the end of that era, and the new era started when he walked back into that hotel with a skinhead. I always thought when he came back, you fucking changed, man. We got a new man back and everything was different after that. We all had to be different because if you're not with him, you're going home. That was the defining end of the youth of that band. Next we come to track 4, Don't Look Back in Anger. In her interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, Melissa Lim details how she and Noel stayed in touch, maintaining a kind of long-distance relationship over the phone after their parting. Lim says she and Gallagher stayed in touch as the tour continued. They would talk on the phone regularly, with Lim answering the phone saying, "What's the story? Morning glory." She often had to console him as the brothers fought non-stop with each other and just about anyone else who entered their orbit, including bandmates, relatives and associates. When Oasis returned to San Francisco, Lim found Gallagher to be distant, but hoping to maintain their relationship, she told him, "It's okay, I won't look back in anger, I know we're just friends." And so, the chorus of Don't Look Back in Anger says, "So Sally can wait, she knows it's too late as we're walking on by. Her soul slides away, but don't look back in anger, I heard you say." Because Melissa chose not to go with him, they have now drifted apart and they're just friends. But it's a bittersweet parting. You can tell because the choruses alternate between saying, "Her soul slides away," and Noel saying, "My soul slides away." And apparently the original chorus as written was, "So sorry can wait, she knows it's too late." It got changed to Sally when Liam misheard the words and said, "Who's Sally?" I wonder if, after parting ways, Melissa regretted turning Noel down. I wonder if she wished she'd said yes and gone with him. If she regretted saying no and now wanted to say yes, that would explain the line, "Please don't put your life in the hands of a rock and roll band who'd throw it all away." This line could be Noel saying, "It's too late now, and you were right, if you had come along, the band would have destroyed you." In Roll With It and Wonderwall, Noel seemingly asks her to come with him out on the road, but Melissa says no. And here, in Don't Look Back in Anger, Melissa takes it back and asks to come with him, and Noel says no. And then we move on to the song Hey Now, which functions as a kind of a summary of the end of Act 1, a kind of a recap of everything that's happened so far. The song opens with, "I hitched a ride with my soul by the side of the road just as the sky turned black." That's Noel abandoning the band in LA, escaping with what's left of his soul, jumping on the first plane out of there as the black clouds gathered overhead. "I took a walk with my fame down memory lane, I never did find my way back." At this point in the story, Noel has left Melissa. They've drifted apart. But in his mind's eye, in his memories, he's still there with her in San Francisco. He's struggling to move on. He's still thinking about her all the time. Feel no shame, 'cause time's no chain. He's trying not to feel guilt and shame for leaving behind what might be the love of his life. Time's no chain. What does a chain do? It binds you. Time is no chain, so time releases you. He's saying time will heal this wound. "And as it fell from the sky, I asked myself why can I never let anyone in?" What falls from the sky? Rain. You remember right in the first line of this song, in this kind of summary of what's happened so far, Noel hitched a ride with his soul just as the sky turned black. He fled the storm. Now he's returning to the storm. He's back with the band. He's back under the black sky. And he's really questioning himself. He's really doubting he made the right decision. And so, the first act ends exactly as it should, with a question hanging in the air. Has Noel made a mistake? Will Noel ever get over Melissa? There's a brief interlude now of around 50 seconds before Act 2 begins. It has no title on the original album. And this interlude lines up perfectly with what the band did as well, because they took a break here for 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks of January 1995. The album has an interlude, and that is also where the band had an interlude. And there's more. Paolo Hewitt says, "It was decided to cancel a proposed Australian tour with Primal Scream in January so as to give Liam's voice a rest. Plus, Bonehead's girlfriend Kate was expecting to give birth in January. It would be a good time to rest up." Now, do you notice the other little historical link there? On the vinyl version of the album, as part of the interval, there's a bonus track called Bonehead's Bank Holiday. And it fits right in there because Bonehead's daughter Lucy was born during that exact holiday. And there was an actual bank holiday in there as well, January the 2nd, 1995. So, if you were ever wondering what is the exact actual date of Bonehead's bank holiday, that's it. It's a 3-week break from the 2nd of January, the actual bank holiday, to the 23rd of January, when Bonehead's daughter, Lucy, was born. And so you can see everything so far lines up perfectly, chronologically, historically, with what actually was happening in the life of Noel Gallagher. The first interlude comes to an end, and Act 2 begins. And the next 2 songs on the album are a fascinating insight into Noel Gallagher's state of mind at the time, if my conspiracy theory is correct. And that's because they show Noel Gallagher having his dark night of the soul, beginning to miss Melissa desperately, and then hitting rock bottom. We only have the lyrics, but you have to remember that's the place where Noel Gallagher actually, usually, tells the truth. And when you look at where the next 2 songs have been placed in the track listing of the album, it does all seem to fit in. Some might say that sunshine follows thunder. Go and tell it to the man who cannot shine. Some might say they don't believe in heaven. Go and tell it to the man who lives in hell. Do you remember how Noel returned to the storm in Hey Now? Well, that's where he is. He's under the black clouds. He's there with the thunder. Also in Hey Now, you remember he was saying time will heal him. Time's no chain. Well, here other people are telling him the same thing. Sunshine will follow this thunder. There'll be sunshine after the dark clouds. But Noel can't see it. Right now, he cannot shine. He's living in hell. Some might say, Noel's in a state of grief, and the lyrics are full of wordplay to the same effect. Take the cryptic line, the sink is full of fishes. That's a wordplay. It's saying, my soul is sinking. Soul is a kind of fish. Soul, sink, a sinking soul. And in the next track, Cast No Shadow, that same downwards trajectory continues. In Cast No Shadow, Noel moves even deeper into a place of profound despair. Most Oasis songs are kind of bittersweet. They've got hope and they've got pain in the same song. But Cast No Shadow is unusual in that it's just all lament. It's all darkness. There doesn't seem to be any hope at all in its few short lines of lyrics, bound with all the weight of all the words he tried to say. Again, here we have Noel in that same place he was in during Wonderwall. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. He's still in that place, he still can't get it out, he still can't express what's on the inside. He is still desperately trying to find a way to get it out, but he can't find the words. Chained to all the places that he never wished to stay. Once again, let's remember the lyrics from Hey Now. I took a walk with my fame down memory lane. I never did find my way back. He's still constantly thinking, about San Francisco. He didn't want to stay there, but he's thinking about Melissa and Melissa's flat. As he faced the sun, he cast no shadow. Noel feels empty, hollow, there's nothing inside. He's just a shadow of his former self. The sun shines through him without warming him at all. He has hit absolute rock bottom. However, anyone familiar with the album knows what comes next. A sudden, almost jarring upswing into positivity. The next song is She's Electric, and it coincides historically, directly, with the time that Noel Gallagher got together with his future wife, Meg Matthews. Paolo Hewitt picks up the story around that early part of 1995. Noel and Meg were now a couple. He had been living alone in a small rented flat near Primrose Hill, but Meg told him he could stay at her place. Noel took off to Guernsey to meet Meg, who had invited him over to a family reunion. She's electric, she's in a family full of eccentrics. Now, this song was written previously, but it was probably placed here to reflect that visit to Guernsey. Noel went over and met Meg's family. I think it's probably also fair to say that the previous two songs, Some Might Say and Cast No Shadow, reflect Noel's time of loneliness when he was living alone in the flat in Primrose Hill, before moving in with Meg. At this point in the story, Meg Matthews is basically Noel's rescuer. She begins to draw him back to real life out of the depths, and he starts to get happier, he starts to recover, he starts to come back to the world. The key line in this song is, I want you to know I've got my mind made up now, but I need more time. Meg is helping him move on. She's helping him come out of himself a bit, but he's not over Melissa yet. He still needs some time. And so we move on to the penultimate song on the album, Morning Glory. This is a song that Noel claims to have completed at Rockfield Studios in Wales when the band were recording this album. So it corresponds to that event, the band going to the studio, in more ways than one.
On the Definitely Maybe tour, I'd met this girl in America. When we would meet, she would say, hey, what's the story, Morning Glory? Right? Now, I don't know what the fucking hell it ever meant. And I shoehorned it into that tune. Why it's ended up as the title of the album, I don't know. I do remember writing that fucking line, all your dreams are made when you change to a mirror and the razor blade, in this room. I've listened to it today feeling like I sound like I was just in the zone there, where it was just like everything that I was writing was meaningful.
I believe that the previous songs in the album were written about things in his recent past. Morning Glory was a song written about what he was doing in the present. This song was about the band recording the masterpiece. All your dreams are made when you're chained to the mirror and the razor blade. I think here Noel is talking about those few days in Melissa Lim's flat in San Francisco. I think it was there that he conceived of this idea to record an album that was actually a story, a true story, an autobiography of a full year of his life. I believe this line is him saying he had the dream of how to do this album while taking cocaine at Melissa Lim's flat. You remember that I've mentioned several times this album is 1 year of Noel Gallagher's life. Well, here is yet another piece of evidence to consider. The finished album was released exactly 1 year to the day after his few days in hiding at Melissa Lim's flat. He was definitely in San Francisco with the Morning Glory girl exactly 1 year previously, on the 2nd of October 94. The album was released on the 2nd of October 95. It's quite possible that the 2nd of October 94 could have been the exact day when all his dreams were made, while chained to the mirror and the razor blade. Today's the day that all the world will see, another sunny afternoon. You remember at the beginning of Act 2, in Some Might Say, Noel was promised that the sun would rise again, even though he couldn't see it. Well, here we are. The sun has risen. It's a sunny afternoon at last. The dark clouds have passed. He's out of the dark depths of Cast No Shadow, and he's working on creating his masterpiece. Walking to the sound of my favourite tune, Tomorrow Never Knows What It Doesn't Know Too Soon. Noel is channeling the Beatles. He's channeling John Lennon. More information on this later. Need a little time to wake up. Need a little time to rest your mind. You know you should, so I guess you might as well. This is Noel feeling the pull, feeling the temptation to get away again for a little break, to go back to San Francisco, have a few days in hiding again with Melissa Lim, to do exactly what he did a year previously, rest his mind. And he seems to answer his own question by saying, you know you should, so I guess you might as well. He seems to say he's intending to go back and see her again. What's the story, Morning Glory? Well, just as Act 1 finished with a question, so Act 2 finishes with a question. What's the story with the Morning Glory girl? What's going to happen next? And so we come to track 11, the second interval. But this one is overlaid with strange sounds, helicopters, tuning radios. The Swamp Song excerpt in the background sounds distant and far away, as if this interval is much longer than the previous one. And then we hear the sound of water lapping on a distant shore. I believe this is Noel writing a song about the future. We've had the first 9 tracks talking about things that happened in the recent past. We had Song 10, Morning Glory, which Noel wrote about something that was happening in the present. And now, for the last track, we're moving into the future. Paolo Hewitt says, according to Meg, Noel, once seized by an image or something on the TV or in the pub, whatever it was that kicked off his antennae, would drop everything and disappear into their small kitchen and furiously write. It's how the lyrics for Champagne Supernova came about. Meg says, I bought this sugar jar which had a little man hanging on it, nearly buried by sugar, and then Noel just went into the kitchen and wrote that song. That jar is to be found on the inside sleeve of Morning Glory. In the future, Noel Gallagher and Meg Matthews moved into a prime piece of London real estate, which they named Supernova Heights. Another article in the Mirror says this: if only Supernova Heights could speak, Noel Gallagher's ex-wife Meg Matthews said last month of the £8 million Primrose Hill party pad they shared in Britpop's heyday. A Telegraph journalist once described seeing supermodels lolling against the fridge, white lines everywhere, and endless gabbing about crop circles and conspiracy theories. Noel admitted as much, telling The Independent, by 1997 it had just gone berserk. I was doing loads of drugs and me and Liam were just out of control. Nights merged into days as they sat there with the curtains closed, debating aliens and moon landings. The song Champagne Supernova starts. How many special people change? How many lives are living strange? Where were you while we were getting high? And here we see the picture that inspired Noel from inside the album cover. A man at the top of the pile, standing on a mountain of sugar. Or is he trapped in there with it, unable to escape? Who's the you? Where were you while we were getting high? It's not Meg, she was right there with him. He's talking to Melissa. He seems to be saying, I'm here with her, but it could have been you. Someday you will find me caught beneath the landslide in a champagne supernova in the sky. I think Champagne Supernova had a double meaning. I do think it was his intended name for his future £8 million house in Primrose Hill. But I think it also meant the afterlife. I think deep down, Noel probably thought he was one day going to die of a drugs overdose. I think this was Noel saying to Melissa, we will be together again one day in heaven. And here's the reason I think that's the hidden meaning of this song, the second verse. Wake up the dawn and ask her why. I dream a dream, she never dies. Wipe that tear away now from your eye. Wake up the dawn and ask her why. What's the dawn? It's the glory you see in the morning, it's the sunrise, it's the morning glory. Wake up, morning glory, and ask her why. Who's the morning glory girl? Melissa. Ask her why I dream a dream, she never dies. Where do people never die? It's heaven. And Noel's saying, wake up Melissa and ask her why. When I picture myself in eternity, why is it I see myself there with you and not with my current partner? Wipe that tear away now from your eye. We have a happy ending to the story. In the end, one day, beyond the veil, in eternity, Noel and Melissa do end up together. And let's look at the bridge now for the final mind-blowing panoramic shot of the whole movie. Because people believe that they're going to get away for the summer, but you and I, we live and die, the world's still spinning round, we don't know why. You and I, we live and die. They've lived, and now they've died, and they are together in the champagne supernova in the sky, looking down on the world. Just picture the shot. They realise that down on Earth, the most exciting thing that most people have in their lives is just looking forward to the summer holidays. But to the two of them, the world spinning is now completely irrelevant. They have each other, so why should the world bother continuing to spin at all? And so, the curtain slowly falls on the Morning Glory story. But don't go away yet, because there's still more. So, I finished my journey in the car, having completed the whole album, and I got out. And as I walked back to the house, a thought occurred to me. What's the Story Morning Glory is a brilliant concept album. It tells a true, real-life historical story, but it seemed a shame that the song Talk Tonight had been left out. Noel had recorded that song right after San Francisco, and he openly says it's about that same episode in his life. In the Supersonic book, Noel says, "This was Oasis's cure for everything. Let's go in the studio." We did It's Good to Be Free, Talk Tonight, and Half the World Away was recorded on that session as well. Talk Tonight was written about those few days in San Francisco. And out of that traumatic period came that great song. So it was meant to be. It's about those few days I spent with that girl. She'd taken me to the playground where she played when she was a kid, and she was making sure that I ate because I was doing so many drugs. It's a document of those few days. And as I looked a little bit closer at Talk Tonight, I suddenly began to see an uncanny amount of connections between that song, the third B-side recorded since San Francisco, and Wonderwall, the third song on the album. For example, in the lyrics of Wonderwall, it says, "Maybe you're going to be the one that saves me." And then in Talk Tonight, it says, "I want to talk tonight about how you saved my life." I realised that Talk Tonight slotted in perfectly after Wonderwall and before Don't Look Back in Anger to bridge that gap in the story. And the connections didn't stop there. I also noticed that Wonderwall and Talk Tonight even used the exact same acoustic guitar motif. Both songs both had the same riff. And here is that riff. In Wonderwall, it happens over the bridge. And in Talk Tonight, it happens over the chorus. And then I even noticed both songs had a cough at the beginning.
I know. What's the story behind the Wonderwall cough?
Oh, that. They're probably just fucking clearing me throat. I don't know. There is no significance behind it.
There were so many similarities, and the song seemed to fit into the story so perfectly. At this point, my curiosity was piqued, so I took a closer look at another one of those songs that Noel mentioned writing on that weekend, Half the World Away. I quickly realised that, bloody hell, this is about that exact same weekend as well. So I sat down at my computer and I lined up all the newly recorded B-sides from Noel's weekend in San Francisco onwards in exact chronological order for 1 year, and then put them next to the songs on the album. And it looked like this. I was amazed to see how every song was perfectly matched with its pair in subject matter and in musical style. Look at Cast No Shadow and Rocking Chair, two songs about loneliness and darkness and despair, similarly arranged, similar subject matter. They are two parts of the same story in perfect chronological order. Look at She's Electric and Round Our Way, two big, upbeat, positive stompers. Look at Champagne Supernova and Masterplan, two vast, towering, epic masterpieces. And as I listened through this second set of 11 songs, my mind was blown. Here was not the same story being told again a second time, but all the gaps being filled in the first story. It's all one story. I realised I was looking at what could be a secret double album, and if that's true, it is one of the greatest musical masterworks of the previous century. So now, briefly, I'm going to walk you through the second set of 11 songs and show you how they fill in all the gaps in the story being told by the album tracks. And as I do so, you make your own mind up. Are these songs meant to go together? Let's take a look. The first B-side written by Noel in that 1 year period of his life after San Francisco was It's Good to Be Free. So, if my conspiracy theory is correct, this should slot perfectly in the story between Hello and Roll With It. The first line says this: head like a rock spinning round and round, I found it in a hole sitting upside down. This could very easily be the row between Noel and Liam after the Whiskey A Go-Go. Noel's head is a complete mess, true to the story. Look how he describes his state of mind. His head's been cut off and it's spinning round and round and he finds it upside down in a hole. You point the finger at me, but I don't believe. They'd had a fight and Noel had lost faith. He didn't believe in the band anymore. It lines up, doesn't it? And look at what the chorus says. The little things, they make me so happy. All I want to do is live by the sea. But it's good to be free. San Francisco is right by the sea. It's called the City by the Bay. At this point in the story, all Noel wanted to do was escape from the band and stay there and live with Melissa. And he says it's good to be free. Free from who? Free of the pressures of the band. It all fits perfectly, doesn't it? The next B-side in this secret second half to the album is Half the World Away, and that was the second B-side on the Whatever single. And you can tell, just from the title of the song, that it already kind of fits. Let's have a look at the lyrics. I would like to leave this city, this old town don't smell too pretty. And when I leave this island, I'll book myself into a soul asylum. So here, in the lyrics, Noel talks about being in a city on an island. That's San Francisco. The city is literally built on a peninsula that juts out into the sea, so it's just like being on an island. And Noel didn't seem to be that keen on the city itself. Anyone who spent any time by the sea knows that fish, seaweed and salt, they don't smell too pretty. Now story-wise, this song should connect Roll With It to Wonderwall. That means this should follow on from Roll With It, where Melissa is counselling Noel and Noel asks her to come back with him. So what do you say? You can't give me the dreams that are mine anyway. You're half the world away. Here we have Noel asking Melissa a question. What do you say? I can't pursue my dreams here. You are literally on the other side of the planet from where I need to be, back in the UK. You are literally half the world away. So, come with me. What do you say? I've been lost, I've been found, but I don't feel down. This line again shows how perfectly this song slots between Roll With It and Wonderwall. It fits perfectly exactly where it should. You remember in Roll With It, Noel was saying, I think I've got a feeling I've lost inside. Now he's saying, I was lost, but now I'm found. He doesn't feel down anymore. Melissa has begun to work her magic on him. The next B-side in chronological order is Talk Tonight, which we've already looked at briefly. And as we've already seen, this song perfectly bridges the gap between Wonderwall, where Noel says, this is your last chance, I'm leaving today, are you going to come with me? And Don't Look Back in Anger, where they've drifted apart and they're just friends and it's over. Talk Tonight is the link between those two songs. I'll never say that I won't ever make you cry, and this I'll say, I don't know why. I know I'm leaving, but I'll be back another day. After Noel gives Melissa her last chance in Wonderwall, Melissa still says no, so Noel leaves, but promises he'll be back. And he also says, I don't know why I'm leaving. He's kind of torn. Part of him wants to stay. I want to talk tonight until the morning light about how you saved my life. In Wonderwall, he said, maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. And in Talk Tonight, he confirms she did save him. Saved his life, in fact. The next album track, however, is Don't Look Back in Anger. And at this point, time has passed and the two of them have drifted apart. And now they're just friends. And the B-side that goes with Don't Look Back in Anger is Acquiesce. And Acquiesce represents a kind of a story jump. We stop talking about Noel and Melissa and suddenly jump back to talk about Noel and the band. You can even tell that's the case because at the beginning of the song, buried down in the mix, there's Noel singing the song about Melissa, What's the Story Morning Glory, on an acoustic guitar. And then over the top of it, suddenly the band cut across that song and a new song starts. We've suddenly moved onto a different storyline for a minute. And this song is about Noel and Liam finally making some kind of peace with each other after the massive catastrophic fallout in LA. I don't know what it is that makes me feel alive. I don't know how to wake the things that sleep inside. I only want to see the light that shines behind your eyes. This is Liam singing, and it's meant to represent him. It perfectly sums up his kind of Hellraiser personality, his determination to create glorious chaos wherever he goes. And it's interesting that Noel seems to have embraced this and recognised that it could be a good thing. 'Cause we need each other, we believe in one another, I know we're going to uncover what's sleeping in our soul. And now we've switched over to Noel singing. He's singing about him and Liam. He's realised that Liam actually fits into the Masterplan after all. I think Noel looked back on Amsterdam and on the Whiskey A Go-Go and realised that Liam's crazy behaviour had actually, in the bigger picture, helped the band towards their goals rather than hindered it. I think Noel believed that Liam's behaviour wasn't actually sabotaging the band after all, it was helping to build their legend. Do you remember in It's Good to Be Free where Noel said, "I don't believe"? Noel has at this point recovered his faith in the band. He's rediscovered his vision, and the band are working together and moving in the same direction once again. And yet, as things improve with the band, Noel's relationship with Melissa deteriorates even further. In chronological release order, the next B-side is Head Shrinker. It's a very angry song, and though I don't have any documentary evidence particularly to back this up, I think it's possible that this represents a massive fight between Noel and Melissa. And there are plenty of clues in the lyrics that this really is about Noel and Melissa, particularly the title, Head Shrinker. Melissa Lim has only spoken publicly about Noel twice to my knowledge. Once to give an interview to the San Francisco Chronicle, and once a few years earlier in a quite angry letter to Mojo magazine in which she described herself as Noel's therapist. And of course, Head Shrinker is slang for therapist. I know a girl who's lost and lonely who sits by the phone on her own, but the phone don't ring and the birds don't sing in her tree. And yet again, this fits in perfectly with the story arc. At this point, they have fully stopped communicating. They're not even talking on the phone anymore. And here we can see from the lyrics that it's kind of breaking Melissa's heart that they can't talk anymore. You remember at the very beginning of the whole album, you hear the Wonderwall song, that's Melissa's theme, and you hear birds singing. At this point, the birds have stopped singing. But don't worry, a few songs down the road, they do start again. Whatever's going down is coming around. I hope you don't regret today for the rest of your lives. I love this line because it once again chronologically fits perfectly with the Oasis timeline in a way you might not expect. I think the line, "Whatever's going down is coming around," refers to the release of the upcoming single, Whatever. On the historical timeline for this to all line up, we should now be at Christmas 1994, and that is exactly when Whatever came out. And of course, it contained the first of Noel's 2 messages to Melissa. The first 2 B-sides written about their time together, so it was a significant moment. But the lyrics seem to suggest that the 2 of them had a massive row before the single was released. And so, the expanded version of Act 1 ends with an even bigger question. Will Noel and Melissa regret that day for the rest of their lives? And will Melissa understand the secret message that Noel is sending to her through his songs? Next up, we come to the first interval again, and the song Bonehead's Bank Holiday. And just as Bonehead's Bank Holiday is a slightly more rare song, only available on the vinyl version of the album, so the next chronologically recorded B-side is also a bit of a rare song, only available on the Japanese version of Some Might Say. Paolo Hewitt says, Noel also cut a solo version of the song written by John Lennon, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, and late at night, alone with Owen Morris in the studio, he would run through some of his unrecorded pieces, tunes he was saving for the right time, the right album. And that song, the Beatles cover, fits in perfectly as well because it describes exactly what Noel was doing. He was hiding his love away in these songs. Chronologically as well, he was writing songs during that 3-week break. During Bonehead's Bank Holiday, he was hiding his love away. And now we move into the second act. Some Might Say is the album song on side A, and the corresponding B-side is It's Better People. In Some Might Say, we had Noel grieving. He couldn't shine anymore. He was being told that sunshine would follow this storm he was going through, but he couldn't see it. And in Better People, we find him wishing he had someone to love, wishing he had someone to talk to. It's better people love one another, because living a life can be tough. It's better people speak to each other, your shame is not enough. You remember in Head Shrinker, Noel and Melissa had stopped talking on the phone, and here, he's wishing he could talk to her again. He's saying life would be better if we still loved each other and if we still spoke on the phone. And you thought we might be, but what you heard before was only sleeping in your brain. But if you came with me, the days would never end, would never be the same. Here we see Noel imagining what life would have been like if Melissa had said yes and come with him. If she had come with him, the days would never end, they'd never be the same. Noel believes there's a chance they could have been together forever. In fact, in the last chorus, he even changes one of the lines to say, "This is going by a different name." When do people go by a different name? It's when they get married. I believe in this song, Noel is saying, if Melissa had said yes, if Melissa had come with him, they would have been together forever, they would have even got married. The next album track is Cast No Shadow. Noel is grieving deeply for Melissa, and the corresponding B-side fits absolutely perfectly. It's Rocking Chair. This fits perfectly with the timeline. This is during the period where Noel was living alone in Primrose Hill, sitting by the phone, hoping it would ring. It's hard enough being alone, sitting here by the phone, waiting for my memories to come and play. You remember in Hey Now, Noel said, "I took a walk with my fame down memory lane. I never did find my way back." He's still there now, waiting for his memories to come and play. In the eye of his mind, Noel is still back there in San Francisco with Melissa. But then, all of a sudden, the dark night of the soul is over. Noel's saviour appears, he meets Meg, and we go into the uplift, which is She's Electric. And the corresponding B-side is Round Our Way. She's Electric is about Noel finding new love, and Round Our Way continues that storyline that was being told in Acquiesce. At this point, he's really bonding with the rest of the band once again. They're all close, and those relationships have been healed. Round our way, the birds are singing. Round our way, the sun shines bright. If you remember, in Head Shrinker at the end of Act 1, when Noel and Melissa stopped talking on the phone, at that point, the birds stopped singing. At that point, Noel was plunged deep into darkness. But here, all of a sudden, the birds are singing again, and we see the first rays of a new, bright sunrise. And that theme of the rising sun continues perfectly into track 10 on the album, which is Morning Glory, which is another way of saying sunrise. At this point in the story, the sun has fully risen again over Noel Gallagher. Today's the day that all the world will see another sunny afternoon. Noel is happy and fulfilled. He's in a new relationship and he is working, recording at Rockfield Studios, perfecting his masterpiece. And the corresponding B-side is the Swamp Song. Now, I consider this to actually be part of the second interval. If you remember, I said before that the second interval was a much longer one. It's where the storyline stretches away into the future. And the Swamp Song is the interval music. It's the same music we've had on track 6 and track 11 on the original album. And here we have it stretched out for 5 minutes. This is a super extended, much longer second interval. The next album track, the next A-side, is Champagne Supernova, Noel's epic grand finale in which he tells Melissa that they will be together again one day on the other side. But last of all, the B-side to Champagne Supernova comes the most fascinating song of them all, the Masterplan. Including the 2 interval tracks on the album, this is the 24th song, and it's kind of like the key that unlocks all the others. Take the time to make some sense of what you want to say and cast your words away upon the waves. This is exactly what Noel has done. This huge concept album, this secret double concept album, has been Noel completing the mission he set himself right at the beginning. You remember when he said, "There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how." And then again in Cast No Shadow, he's bound with all the weight of all the words he tried to say. At this point, he's taken some time to make some sense of what he wanted to say. He's done it. He's completed it. It is this double album. That is his statement. That is his love letter to Melissa. And what about cast your words away upon the waves? Well, there's 2 meanings here. This could be the radio waves, the airwaves, but I think he was visualising the music that's recorded in England being sent half the world away to San Francisco across the seas. And we see that later when he talks about the ship of hope. Sail them home with acquiesce on a ship of hope today. So, Noel is picturing his words crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a ship. And you see what he says? Sail them home with acquiesce. Acquiesce is a B-side. He's saying, I'm sending my words across the world to you, take them home and listen to the B-sides. Take it home with acquiesce. He's telling Melissa in song to do exactly what we've been doing. Listen to the album with the B-sides. And that's not the only place in this song he says that, but we'll come to that in a minute. The chorus is fantastic. It's a cliffhanger ending. We have Noel standing on the shore of the sea, arguing with himself about whether he should go back, now that he's finished his masterpiece, and find Melissa again. Dance if you want to dance, please brother take a chance, you know they're gonna go which way they want to go. The first voice, the voice of romance, tells him to go for it. The band are going to go which way they want to go. Go find Melissa and dance with her. Do it if you want to. But then the voice on his other shoulder kicks in to present the counter-argument. All we know is that we don't know how it's going to be. Please brother, let it be. This second voice contradicts the first one and says, no, don't go back. It's too risky. We don't know what could happen. And then he finishes with this cryptic statement. Life, on the other hand, won't make us understand we're all part of the Masterplan. The Masterplan. Other than the song itself, what is the Masterplan? The second verse says this. Everything that's been has passed. The answer's in the looking glass. He's saying, all these things are my past. Everything that's been is past. And the answer is in the looking glass. A looking glass is a mirror. The answer's in the mirror. It's him. It's what he sees when he looks in the mirror. It's his past. Noel Gallagher is the answer to the riddle of this album. It's the story of his past. And listen to this line. There's 24 million doors on life's endless corridors. Look at what we have here. 24 songs, 24. And each of those songs is kind of a door on the endless corridor of life. Each one of these songs is like a door you can open and you can see a window to a moment in Noel's life. He is literally telling us what he's created here. 24 doors down memory lane, down life's endless corridor. And then, while we're talking about that idea of walking down life's endless corridors with doors on either side, each one representing a part of Noel's life, let's take a look at the album cover. People on a street with doorways on either side. Life's endless corridor. It's a picture of 3 men, Brian Cannon, Owen Morris, and Sean Rowley, who is probably meant to represent Noel. They're all on life's endless corridor under a glorious sunrise.
The guy on the cover is a friend of mine called Sean Rowley. That's supposed to be me on the cover, but he stood in for me because I was sadly too drunk to attend the photo shoot.
Other than that, the only other urban myth which everybody's took on board is that it should have been Liam and Noel on the front cover of Morning Glory, but they were too pissed the night before to get up to do it. That's nonsense. I made that up. They were actually in Dublin playing Slane Castle the night before, so they were never going to be on the sleeve.
Have you noticed that all the street lights are still on? This was taken in the early morning by the light of Morning Glory. This picture was meant to be those three guys on a street as the sun rose over them. Three people on life's endless corridor under the light of Morning Glory. The photo didn't quite turn out as intended, however.
I remember getting the thing for the Morning Glory cover and being furious. I was like, is that it? What the fucking hell's that? I wanted it to be shot early in the morning in the streets while the streets were empty. And I think me and Liam were supposed to be in it somewhere, but we'd been out all night, couldn't fucking get it together. But of course it's become iconic and people read a lot of things into it.
I think the cover is also a clue that Brian Cannon and Owen Morris were also in on the Masterplan. Owen Morris on the music production side of The Big Secret and Brian Cannon on the art production side. It all had to work together to make this the absolute masterwork that it is. Morris is even holding up the master copy of the album in the picture. And interestingly, the street they are walking down is Berwick Street, which directly intersects a road called Noel Street in London. Even the album cover seems to confirm my conspiracy theory. But here's the really crazy thing. Until the Supersonic documentary came out and Melissa Lim spoke to the San Francisco Chronicle, most people didn't really know who she was or what had happened behind the scenes in very much detail at all. So, until that time, until she went public, no one could have put this all together. Which therefore also means, up until a few years ago, this massive masterwork existed entirely for an audience of one, and it seems she never actually got that message. And we've nearly finished, but not quite yet. There's still more. As I looked at the 24 songs I now had lined up next to each other, I realised that they kind of looked a little bit like old school 7-inch vinyl singles, each one with an A-side and a corresponding B-side. A-side being album track and B-side just being B-side. The first song is called Hello, but that little A-B pair of tunes, Hello and It's Good to Be Free, are actually about saying goodbye. Hello and goodbye. That's a Beatles song, isn't it? Hello, goodbye. I decided to title the first little imaginary 7-inch single, Hello, Goodbye. And then, just out of curiosity, I decided to see if I could find a similar Beatles reference that would work for the second A-B pairing, which was Roll With It and Half the World Away. And there it was in the lyrics of Roll With It. There's a line that says, "It's all too much for me to take." And It's All Too Much is a Beatles song. But at that point, I caught myself. It's all too much is a pretty common phrase. Was I just going down a rabbit hole here? I opened up Paolo Hewitt's biography on Oasis, Getting High, once again, and I read about what they were doing in the studio at Rockfield on the very first day with Alan White, their new drummer. Paolo Hewitt says, the first thing they learned was Roll With It. Liam, of course, had to test the new drummer. He swaggered into the studio and said, "All right, let's do that Beatles song, It's All Too Much." Alan said, "Fine, 1, 2, 3, 4, and counted them all in. Liam was okay after that. So, at Rockfield, the first song they were learning with Alan was Roll With It, and before Liam was happy, he had to hear Alan play It's All Too Much by the Beatles. It seemed like maybe there was a connection there after all. So I named this second little 7-inch single, this little A-B pair, It's All Too Much. I then looked at the two titles I'd got so far and realised, bloody hell, these are actually telling the same story again. a third time. The first two songs in the story are about saying hello to Melissa and goodbye to the band. The next two songs are about Noel being overwhelmed, being a mess, and being counselled by Melissa. And the Beatles song there is It's All Too Much. I realised the Beatles songs were also telling the story. I looked at the next two songs, Wonderwall and Talk Tonight, and there it was again, in the lyrics to Wonderwall. All the roads we have to walk are winding. The long and winding road, the Beatles. Yet another Beatles song that accurately tells the story. The coincidences were starting to mount up. I came to the next pair of songs, Don't Look Back in Anger and Acquiesce, and found it again. So I start a revolution from my bed. Revolution is a Beatles song. A revolution means a turning around. It means revolving, going back to where you were. And that's exactly what Noel Gallagher did in this part of the story. He left Melissa and went back to the band. Once again, the Beatles song was also telling the story. At this point, I began to see the joke in the album's title. What's the story? Which one is it? As I looked at the dots I'd connected so far, I realised I'd got 4 Beatles song titles, all from different albums. I had 12 A-side, B-side singles here, but the Beatles had 13 albums. I wondered if maybe Noel had actually used all 13 albums, and if I had somehow missed something somewhere. Where was the 13th A-B single? Perhaps I got this wrong. But then I remembered something. There were another 2 songs. The B-sides to Don't Look Back in Anger, Step Out and Underneath the Sky. Step Out was originally part of the album. It was part of the intended script recorded at Rockfield. It had to be dropped at the last minute, however, because they were sued by Stevie Wonder, from whom quite a lot of the song was lifted, and asked for a very, very high royalty rate. So at that point, they removed the song from the album. Step Out does, however, seem to plug a missing hole in the story, how Noel went from his dark night of the soul in Cast No Shadow and Rocking Chair to all of a sudden being with Meg in She's Electric. Step Out is the missing piece from that puzzle. And in Underneath the Sky, if you look at the lyrics in this context, it seems to be Noel admitting to being a secret storyteller. So I added those 2 songs on the end as a 13th A-B disc, a kind of bonus disc of unused songs. And that made 26 songs, 13 A-side, B-side, 7-inch singles to correspond to the 13 Beatles albums. Instead of having the 2 blank interval tracks just on one disc together, I decided to split up the interval songs, just have one interval and Bonehead's Bank Holiday, and then the second interval and You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. And once I put everything in order, I decided to continue looking for more Beatles references. In the next single, I found the reference in Head Shrinker. I hope you don't regret today for the rest of your life. I've been treated like a dog and I'm out of here. A hard day where he was treated like a dog. Hard day's night. The next one was Bonehead's Bank Holiday. You know I need a little break to get away for a holiday so I can feel the sun, 'cause in the sun they say it's fun if you get some. I immediately wrote down the McCartney tune, I'll Follow the Sun. The next single was Some Might Say And It's Better People. This is the time when Noel was on his own in the flat in Primrose Hill. People were telling him that sunshine would follow this storm, but he couldn't see it. He was lonely. He was wondering if he had just lost the love of his life. So I wrote down the Beatles song, Misery. The next one was Cast No Shadow and Rocking Chair. Cast No Shadow talks about Noel being completely hollow, the sun shining through him. He cast no shadow. So I wrote down the Beatles song, I'm Looking Through You. Next up was She's Electric and Round Our Way. And there's that key line in She's Electric that says, I want you to know I've got my mind made up now. So I wrote down the Beatles song, I Want to Be Your Man. It just fit. The next pair of songs were Morning Glory and The Swamp Song. And in Morning Glory it says, tomorrow never knows what it doesn't know too soon. Tomorrow Never Knows is of course a Beatles song, so I named that single after it. The 12th single, representing the second interval, just named itself. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. And the last one was Champagne Supernova and the Masterplan, and I could think of no more suitable Beatles title for it than The End. And of course, last of all, we had that bonus disc of songs that didn't quite make it in, but were written for the same story, Step Out and Underneath the Sky. Step Out is about Noel meeting Meg. She's described as a woman wearing leopard skin, driving a Jaguar. She looks like a star. She's dancing under a glittering diamond disco ball. A woman high on a mountainside, dancing under a diamond glittering disco ball. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. I lined up all the song titles, double-checked the albums they'd all come from, and my hunch was confirmed. I think it's highly likely Noel used all 13 Beatles albums to tell the story of his life over a year exactly. And so I thought a good name for the collection would be a slight adaptation of one of the most famous and well-loved Beatles songs of all time. Instead of A Day in the Life, we've got A Year in the Life. Why not call this collection exactly what it is? But then I thought, once again, for the millionth time, hang on, am I being an idiot here? Am I just going down a rabbit hole? Is this all bollocks? At which point I had a look inside the album liner notes, where there is a strange cryptic paragraph written by Paolo Hewitt. He says, coming down off the Nova, somewhere near the boiled egg, that is the Royal Albert Hall, we watch Paul's sun crossed with John's star and hold ice cream hands. That's a riddle. I believe this is Paolo Hewitt talking about the insiders listening through the album for the first time. And by the sounds of it, they did so somewhere near the Royal Albert Hall in London. We watch Paul's sun crossed with John's star. What is a song Paul McCartney wrote about the sun? I'll Follow the Sun. It's one of the singles, isn't it? And what's John's star? It's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Again, it's one of the singles. I began to think, maybe I wasn't so far off after all. In all reality, all hypothetical conspiracy theories aside, this is what I think might have happened. Back in the day, Noel was a massive stoner. He was into UFOs, pyramids, and the idea of secret messages hidden in Beatles songs. I think Noel was stoned, listening to the Beatles, and while he was there in that place, he started making all these mad connections between the songs, kind of seeing a code in the songs. And I think that when he came down off his high, he listened to them again and realised the codes weren't there. And I also think that probably pissed him off a little bit. I think he kind of thought, the Beatles have missed a trick here. Maybe he was disappointed to not find a genuine trail of breadcrumbs that really did lead to some brilliant hidden secret. Perhaps he decided the Beatles should have done that, so fuck it, I'm just going to do it myself. I'd like to leave you with one final brain-melting thought. This album is a 3-act play, a secret, hidden one. It tells a true story, but it tells it in 3 ways. It tells it via the normal album listing, via the expanded album listing with the B-sides, and also via the Beatles song titles. The number 3 seems to be everywhere in this album. There's 3 men on the front cover. There's 3 pictures of each band member on the inside. And what's more, this album, which is 3 versions of a 3-act play, is also part of an even bigger 3-act play, which includes the album before, Definitely Maybe, and the album after, Be Here Now. So, the first 3 albums could be taken as an even bigger 3-act play. So what if Be Here Now and Definitely Maybe are also structured in the same way as Morning Glory? That's 3 sets of 3 sets of 3. That's a Rubik's Cube of storytelling. But let's pull the camera back even further. What if the 90s albums are Act 1 of an even bigger play that's being acted out on the world stage? The band released those 3 albums and then took a 3-year interval. The Naughties were Act 2, where the band experienced the dark night of the soul. So what if, in the real world right now, we are currently in the long extended interval, the second interval, just waiting for the grand finale? What if, for Noel and Liam, all the world is a stage and they're just making us wait for the big finish? If that was true, we wouldn't just have a Rubik's Cube of storytelling, we would have a Rubik's Cube of Rubik's Cubes. But I think I will stop unpacking everything there. This has already been a very long video. And I'll just say, this has been a lot of fun to dig into, but I hold my hand up and say, I could be wrong about everything. Remember, it's just a conspiracy theory. And I'm sure I've missed loads of stuff here, so please let me know in the comments if you've noticed anything that I haven't mentioned. But in the meantime, give me back that beer.